Today is a very special episode because we have a very special guest joining us.
Why do we have a special guest?
Because it is ITM's 30-year anniversary.
Which is pretty cool.
Which is really
30
cool.
years of being a gold and silver dealer, which is pretty neat.
Impressive.
So my dad started the business in 1995. So we're October of 1995. So we wanted to celebrate by bringing him on. He's retired now. He's been retired for 8 years, but we wanted to bring him on because he's got a unique perspective, having been in this world for 30 years, essentially.
Yeah.
So, he still follows stuff. He still, knows the economics of things. So I think this is going to be really cool.
I'm super excited.
Let's go pick him up. All right. Well, welcome to what we call Gold Rush Hour.
First, thank you again for joining us today. We're super excited. We were just telling everyone out there that ITM is celebrating 30 years. So congratulations on that. Did you think when you started ITM that it would be here 30 years later? Could you have imagined what it would become?
Well, when I first started ITM, it was, how am I going to make it a week?
Sure, yeah.
And then finally I got it to the point where, how are we going to survive the month? And now we're looking at 30 years and maybe making it to 60 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, to that point, actually, it's funny because I was thinking about it. 1995, back then we didn't have social media. We didn't have YouTube or Google or so many of, everything that we use now. I can imagine it probably was really hard to get the word out. What was it like trying to reach people and help educate people back at that time?
Well, it was difficult, but I had a very fortunate meeting with a talk show host in 1995, and he was no longer endorsing the company that I was with, and so I called him. There were some programs I was interested in, and they had
like advertising on?
Right, and they were exclusive. And but this talk show host told me 8 different radio stations to try, and I did. I tried KSFO up in San Francisco, which was the main one he recommended, and that's the one that launched us. And it was very difficult to get mainstream talk show hosts involved in gold and product at that time. So it was a challenge, to say the least.
I'm sure.
Yeah, because back then, speaking to what you were talking about, he had to, basically, we couldn't get our information out to people readily available, right? So we had to get people to call us, and then we could educate them. Only once they called in could we really educate, right? And so now what's cool is we can do that for free to everyone around the world very easily. And yeah, so back then it was, you had to get them to call first, and then you could teach them what was really going on.
I'm curious, with, I guess, that accessibility of information today, all of the things that we talk about, again, that information being more readily accessible back then, what did people say, when you told them what you were doing? Were people supportive? Were people questioning it? I'd imagine even general knowledge sentiment might have been different, or?
Well, in the beginning, when I first started ITM, we were at the very end of a long bear market for gold. And a bear market meaning it was a down market. A bull market, it means it's an up market. And anytime, whether it's stocks, bonds, gold, you name it, when it's been in that long of a bear market, it's very difficult to get people involved. They don't want anything to do with it. For instance, stocks in 1982 was about to embark on the greatest bull market in history, and only 9% of the public were in stocks. When we got to 2000, when we saw the big crash of the NASDAQ and the stock market over those next few years, you had over 50% of the people in the stock market. So it's very difficult at the beginning of a bear market, or at the end of a bear market and the beginning of a bull market, to get people to join in the conversation.
And what was the lowest price that gold was during that period of time?
Well, you're asking me to remember back now 30 years, approximately.
$252 an ounce.
It was $252.20.
Yes. Yeah. Makes sense. $252.20. And today, when I left to come to the office, it was $4,200.
Right. And, you know, just like any market, it's going to have its ups and its downs. But I think 4,200 is, we're going to look back up on that and think, geez, gold was really cheap then.
It's funny, I think I said that the last time we were
yeah,
in this
like
rush hour.
Like
No.
Totally.
And for unfortunate reasons, not for because it's a good investment and you're like, yay, gold went up. It's because the dollar is just trash.
That's right.
Yeah. You know, I'm curious, was there kind of a light bulb moment for you? I always like to ask people, was there a light bulb moment when you thought, hey, you know, physical gold, silver, this is the way to go? Was there something that clicked, or was it kind of a gradual process?
I got involved with gold. I had been in real estate, and interest rates had gone up to 9.75 in October of '89, I believe it was. Left real estate, was looking for what I was going to do with my rest of my life, and I went and answered an ad and started working for a gold company, and they taught gold in relationship to the economy, the dollar, and the markets, and that really turned me on. And that's really what got me lit up. Was I began to study history, and the history of the markets and the history of gold, and you know why gold goes up at certain periods of time. And so I began to report on the gold market and the economy, and interviewed a lot of different economists and newsletter writers from around the country. And that's really what lit the fire for me, because I could see that we were headed down a path that was unsustainable. And when I first went into business in 1995, and what's it now? It's what, over?
Almost 38.
Almost 38.
Yeah.
And so there's some that will say it's just, you know, it can be overcome, but at 38 trillion, I used to write about, you know, if you stacked $1 trillion bills on top of each other, how far that would stack up. And I don't have it off the top of my head today, but it's overwhelming. And so it's unsustainable, and at some point the piper will have to be paid.
Yeah. Isn't that true? What about, you know, to that point, I guess what you were seeing back then, what was the inspiration for creating ITM?
I just felt guided, I guess, to open ITM Trading. I meditate and do some self-hypnosis, and I prayed a lot, and I had an office where I could close my door and meditate and visualize. It's an interesting story, but it's not a short story, if you want to hear it.
I want to hear it.
So there was a guy named Dave, and he worked for another company that I had worked for, and he did all the editing of their newsletter, and he did a lot for the company. But one of the other things that he did was he wrote and edited articles, and I wrote some articles for the newsletter. So I had no idea how I was going to make up brochures, how I was going to advertise. None of that did I know at that particular time. I just sat down and wrote 3 pages handwriting of my thoughts about the economy in the newsletter. And I thought, well, where am I going to get this, put together? So I took it to Alpha Graphics. And they had a young guy there named Thomas. And Thomas was not very cordial, to say the least. And so I showed him the piece, and I said I'd like to get this put in a form for a newsletter. He says, oh, we can do that. But he was very gruff. So I would go back to the office, and I would meditate and visualize, and the momentum began to build inside of me. And I would run into some difficulties, and I would think, gosh, I wish Dave was around to help me with this. And that happened 4 or 5 times. And then so one day, I'm lying down in my office meditating, and I get a call from Alpha Graphics from Thomas, and he said, your piece is ready. And so I jumped up and started driving on the way, and on the way I thought to myself, gosh, I wish Dave was around. I got to Alpha Graphics, and Thomas was standing way in the back, and I'm waiting for him, and he comes over very gruffly and says, here's what you got. And what I'd handwritten had turned into about a quarter of a page, about a half of a page typed out. And Thomas looked at me and said, you got a lot of grammar corrections in here and so forth, that need to be taken care of. And I said, well, I thought you guys were going to help me. No, you got to get somebody else to do that kind of thing. And I thought, man, I wish Dave was here. And from over the top of my shoulder, I heard, hey, how's it going? And I turned around, it was Dave.
What? At Alpha Graphics?
Yes. And I gave thanks at that moment, because that was my absolute sign that was. And he said, I asked him if he had, was doing anything on the side, and he said, sure. And so he made up the brochures for me, and helped me really a great deal. And at that time he said, if you were a competitor, it'd be one thing. And but I think we've risen to be more than a competitor. And but that's how it all started.
All right.
Long story.
No, I love it. Shout out Dave.
Right.
What about I guess it's just interesting. Maybe another question I had too was, from when you started, all the things you've been warning about all the years and helping educate people on, is there anything that has surprised you with how things have gone today, where we are today?
Well, I guess if I was surprised by how long it's taken for this to unfold, and it is unfolding, and we are much, much closer to the real trouble than we were then. But I would just say that, how long it's and the swelling of the debt has just been very, very surprising and worrisome.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to that point, there are a lot of people who watch us and have been watching us for a while, and sometimes I see questions come in about gold and silver. To anyone watching who maybe is on the fence or trying to decide their next move with getting positioned and getting protected with gold and silver, is there any advice that you would give to anyone watching?
Well, the first thing I guess I would say is, if you know that you're going to need cash in short term, don't do anything.
But if you're able, meaning if you need cash in the short term and that's all you have, don't buy gold and silver. Keep the cash.
Right.
Okay.
Because you need dollars these days.
Right, and you won't have to convert out of gold and silver when you need cash. You want to be able to hold it, is what he's saying.
And Richard Russell was a mentor of mine. I got to read him every day on the internet. He wrote the Dow Theory letters. And Russell would say, if I had to give something of, that I thought was to my grandkids that I was going to pass along, 100 years from now, it wouldn't be stocks, It wouldn't be bonds, it'd be gold. And he says there'll be some point where we'll look back in history and we'll wish we had all our money in gold. But we have to have our cash reserves and be able to sustain ourselves long term. But there will come a time, I believe that Russell is right, we'll look back and wish we had all our money in gold. Jeffrey Gunlett, who's known as the Bond King, was on CNBC about 2 weeks ago after the Fed decision to lower interest rates. And Jeffrey, the bond market is more sophisticated than the stock market, and Jeffrey's a pretty sophisticated guy. And he said he thought that 25% was a good position for gold today. They have him on there because he is the Bond King and he is very insightful.
Yeah, it feels like the dam is breaking. I don't know, it feels like things are happening fast. With so much kind of sometimes the doom and gloom that we live in, actually something that Eric and I like to sometimes ask each other is, what's one thing that's giving you hope today? I always like that question.
Hope about?
The future.
Too many years in gloom and doom. He has no hope.
Well, what we're talking about, it's really not a very hopeful situation. People talk about reset. Well, when we get to reset, we'll definitely be wishing we had all our money in gold. But along the way, you've got to have something that's going to protect your portfolio other than being in stocks or bonds. The longer this goes on, the more vulnerable those markets become. I think gold is certainly one of the things that gives me hope. And
I like that answer. That's good. Well, we are celebrating 30 years of ITM, and I always tell people, ITM is a family business, but I'm curious, what has it meant to you to see your son Eric continue on your legacy in this next chapter?
Well, at first, I wasn't recruiting Eric to come over to ITM. He was in the real estate, and not that I didn't want him to, but as parents, we get resistance a lot of times from what we want from our children, and but it just turned out that real estate took a really bad dump in 2006, and so he came over, and of course I've known all his life that how capable and how dynamic he is, and so it just turned out that it worked out for him to buy the company. In 2016, I got really sick, and I knew, as I said, I raised him to think positive and believe in himself, and so it's been a great experience for him and for me.
I love that.
Yeah, and with like the advent of YouTube and social media and all that kind of stuff, it's just cool because we're able to really help more people, I feel like, then.
Yeah.
And get into gold, because I think all three of us here in the car 100% know in our heart that you have to own gold and silver if you're going to survive and thrive what's coming. And I'm just grateful that we can reach more people to be able to do that.
Definitely.
Think about all the people who've bought gold over the past 30 years, and people who bought it when it was 252, hopefully they still have it, or bought it at 1,500 or 2,000 or 2,500, and they've watched their portfolio recently just really get even stronger, and so just super grateful for that.
Richard Russell used to say, don't sell your gold, because if you do, it's going to be hard for you to get back in. And so he recommended just holding it and just continue to hold it. Don't sell it. And I feel like that's always been true, good advice.
Yeah, I'd agree. Unfortunately, it seems like we've had a lot of people recently with the rise in price that they think, oh, well, I'll just get rid of my gold and I'll do a remodel, or I'll get rid of my gold and buy a car, or, like, don't sell your gold for that kind of stuff. You're just getting rid of your insurance policy for what's coming.
Yeah.
You can't always convince people to do what's best for them.
No, but like you said, it is nice that we're able to reach so many more people. Craig, I see your quote on the wall every day actually in the office, and it's always inspiring because I think education is central to what we do. I know that's what I'm always trying to do when I come on and when Eric and I do these, and really just kind of the fabric of the company, I'd say.
Well, one of the great things is that, people at least have that chance to make decisions today.
Thanks for coming and doing this with us, Dad.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Well,
We'll have it in the logs forever.
I haven't done this type of thing in a long time, and I've enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Cool.
it was awesome to have you.
Log in. Thanks for being on.